Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Three in the Keystone, episode 58. We got myself, Adam Seltzer, alongside Chris Guest, and we have Al Ryan for a limited amount of time tonight. He got his hand slapped by his wife, Casey, I guess, down on vacation. You know, we set up the podcast to be a Tuesday night. He said he'd be here in full blast, and now he's scooting out on us for date night.
Well, look, you got to do what you got to do, man. I'm on vacation. I'm in the Garden State. So I feel like it can't be, it's not three in the Keystone tonight. It's two in the Keystone, one in the Garden State, one in the Parkway.
Two into something. We'll keep that joke for another day.
I had to be here, though, because, Adam, I know we wanted to tease a little something tonight.
Yeah, so we have a major announcement, although we weren't going to make it tonight because you weren't going to be here. So we're going to hold off still so we get a full episode reaction. But I did laugh at some of the comments on Instagram. And if you're not following us, make sure you are at 3K Podcast, as Al put out a story in regards to guessing what the big announcement could be. And I thought the funniest one was the one that said that Chris and Al are going to retire from drafts because they have no shot of winning them anytime in the near future.
I didn't see that.
No, I saw it. I may have just kind of made it up, but
I think the only thing Al's teasing is those guns. Let them fully out, bro.
And actually, it's 3K underscore podcast. But like I said, stay tuned next week. We have a major announcement. I'm very excited for what's coming in the future, but we're going to hold off for that for next week. Al, do you want to get your opinion on one thing before you sign off? Because we're going to dedicate this week's episode. 58 is a terrible number. There was nobody. It was Jack Lambert, Jonathan Papelbon. Nobody really wanted to dedicate this week's episode to. So we're going off the grid. We're going to dedicate it to the Media Little League team. Shout out to your boys.
There we go. Did you guys watch that game?
I did.
I missed it. I saw the walk-off homer, obviously, but they played tomorrow, which will be technically today if you're listening.
Yeah, 7 p.m. the primetime slot.
Who do they got?
I watched that game. That game was a pitcher's duel like crazy. Like those two boys were going at it.
So tomorrow night they have Texas, but the pitcher's duel, guess which was funny. The kid that was dealing for the team that Media played, he was the kid that they smacked around for like 6 runs in the previous.
Yeah. He made them adjustments.
Yeah,
that's history. That's sports history. Never has that happened, I would want to say, right?
He had a little punk in him though. He was giving a little bit of the whimpers and this and that when he would get pinched for calls and stuff. But he was good though. He did his thing.
I don't mind it. Yeah,
no, I like the personality shown.
So if they get to the final, are we going up?
Well, butts on the ground, as you guys like to say.
That's true. I don't know if our pregnant wives will support us going to Williamsport for the week, but hey, got to do what you got to do in the media game.
Exactly right. All right, well, listen, you boys have fun. Hold it down. And maybe I'll check in via cell phone from the Dead Dog or something in an hour or so.
Please don't.
All right, well, time for me to drop that beat.
Later, Al. All right, Chris, let's get into it. You know, I think we've been lucky.
Who's that guy?
The mystery man. I think we've been lucky in the fact that when we started this podcast last July, we had a Phillies World Series run. We had an Eagles Super Bowl run. As disappointing as the Sixers' end of the season was, it was a pretty positive regular season that the Sixers had. We've never really had too many negative segments, but we got to jump into it tonight. Obviously, the James Harden Daryl Morey situation has burst up in flames at this point. We'll give a little bit of background before we get into it for those of you guys who aren't living on planet Earth. When we last left you guys on the podcast, James Harden had opted in to his player option for $35 million and requested a trade. All was well and good with us. That's exactly what we wanted. No James Harden, and we get something back for him. You know, he did say he wants to play for the Clippers. We all had these trades that were we thought would be okay. Sixers weren't happy with what the Clippers were offering. So they came out Saturday and said that they're no longer shopping James Harden. They expect him back at training camp this year, and they expect to be a championship team. Then the real bomb dropped yesterday morning. James Harden, while in China doing his camps, stated, and I quote, "Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization he's a part of." And then he went on to repeat himself just to emphasize further that he no longer wants to be a part of this organization. Chris, tell me that this is not all just going to burn at this point.
Dude, I listen. James Harden ain't ruining my night, my week, my summer. I'm not letting it happen. All right. This team has given us already so much angst and negativity for so long. I'm not gonna let it happen again. I will say this. I really don't care about James Harden. To quote someone wise, I don't care about that man. Quoting, of course, Embiid when he was talking about Ben Simmons during that fiasco. It's just I don't even know what to think about it anymore, who to blame anymore. Like I can't. I get from the perspective Harden's frustration only in the sense that Morey probably made him a promise that he really couldn't keep, and he just told him, he gave him the Kool-Aid anyway. Harden drank it, and he got caught with his hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. And he wasn't able to back up that promise, or management wouldn't allow him to back up that promise, or whatever the case may be. And now he's caught with his pants down. And Harden's like, yo, bro, what's up with that bag? And he's like, there's no bag. There's no bag to be had. So in that sense, he's calling Morey a liar, and maybe he is. But at the same time, as a man, you did not live up to your end of the bargain last year for this organization on the court.
In the playoffs, he had a good regular
in the playoffs as a whole. There's been games, here and there where he showed up big time, whatever. But for the most part, he did not show up, especially when they needed him the most in Game 7. You know that this is a "what have you done for me lately" league when it comes to the contracts, and you're going to be up for the official bag after this year. I've said it a million times on here. I've said it a million times in the street. I've said it a million times to my wife, a million times to you off the record. If James Harden comes in here and thinks he's going to show his ass like he did in Houston, like he did in Brooklyn, under this circumstance where he needs to be productive and constructive to get paid, he's a fool. He'll never win a championship. And I don't want anybody like that in my organization.
So that's what it comes down to is, by all accounts, you're right. Him coming in and making a complete mockery of the situation has terrible effects on his long-term value and the contract that he seeks. But I don't know if he knows that. And that's the problem.
Right.
Right. So now all of a sudden you're in a situation where this is not Ben Simmons, where Ben's going to sit at home and do nothing. Like, this guy's going to come to camp because he wants to get paid. Remember, Ben Simmons wasn't getting paid, and he's going to make a mockery of this team and be a complete distraction. So at this point, is it in their best interest to just get rid of him and take what you can get? Is that the best thing that can happen in this situation? Is give James his way, send him away, and if it's Marcus Morris and a first-round pick, then that's what it is.
If those guys that are going to be incoming are on 1-year deals, or 1 year left, I should say, on their deals, fine. But the bigger get at this point for the Sixers, if there's no one being offered that's of star quality, like Morey and the team want, then the best get for us is to let him play this out and get his money off the books and clear up that max spot next summer. That's the best bet you can offer. Now, the market next year is not great. So they, of course, in typical Sixers fashion, banked on a market in an offseason that's not even a good market in the offseason for 2024. But it's at least we can get guys in that position who want to be here. And I think that's so important. And this team is the only team in this city right now, literally. Well, maybe the Flyers. But the Eagles and the Phillies don't have a problem with getting guys to play in Philadelphia at all. In fact, there are guys that are, like, basically, I don't want to say begging, but guys that are very open in the least to come to those respective teams and play for this city. The Sixers are the only professional team right now that we have that's competitive, that players from all accounts, are not thrilled or excited about coming here. They're not thrilled about being traded here. They're damn sure not thrilled about signing as free agents here. And the bigger story, which I'm sure you probably would get to in a minute, but Embiid taking Philly off his social media. What does that mean? Are we on the brink of the oblivion that we've been, seeing for some time now, where he asks it out and then we're at complete rebuild mode? And do we even really not want that?
So there's a lot of tentacles. I want to get to each of them at some point in time, but I want to mention the first part of what you were talking about, and that is the max spots for next year in free agency. By all accounts, as long as James Harden is in this situation, players around the league are always going to stick up for players. And you've seen that already. Kyrie Irving, as whacked as he is, has came to James' defense. I saw a podcast with Andre Iguodala, and he came to James' defense. Danny Green said something, and he came to James' defense. Like, these players are always going to stick together, right or wrong. And if you think that players are going to all of a sudden want to come here and play under Daryl Morey, I don't think that's the case. And if that's a tiebreaker, unless you're overpaying a guy, I think the Sixers are now in a situation where they're going to have to get rid of Daryl Morey.
I was about to say that's absolutely a cog that has to happen, because let's not get it twisted. Daryl Morey hasn't done this organization any favors either. I mean, he hitched his wagon to James in the very beginning. He hitched his wagon.
Hold on. We were all on board with it at the time.
No, I'm just saying, no, that's the fact of the matter. He not only did he hitch his wagon to James, but he hitched his wagon to everything that James wanted and everyone James wanted. We got the Daniel Houses of the world. We got the Montrezl Harrells of the world. We let go of Doc Rivers, which we wanted also, but nonetheless, that was clearly a result of James Harden and what he wanted. And we don't really know, and we've all speculated what role Embiid has with this organization behind closed doors. What input does he have? What input does he want? It doesn't seem like this team ever does him a solid, and it damn sure doesn't seem like Daryl Morey has in this regard, where hitching to another superstar, quote unquote, and getting bit for it. We now no longer have draft capital. So we can't just rebuild to on our own from scratch right now. We would have to do it via a trade of a guy like Embiid. And we're in a tough spot. We're very much in we're even, I would argue, Seltzer, that we're actually even in a bigger purgatorial spot now than we were in the show your love teams.
100%.
Because at least, even if we were a 5 or a 6 or a 7 with those teams, and we knew we would be out in the first, if not at best second round, at least we had draft picks.
So this
is where we had someone to look forward to. We don't have any of that right now.
This is where I'll disagree with you, because I think it's almost at that point, but they still have that chip in Joel Embiid that if they wanted to trade him, they could get a giant head start on a rebuild.
Well, they got to do it now, and they got to do it while the iron's hot and before he requests it. Because if he requests it, the value's gone.
Even if he requests it, unless he says X, Y, or Z teams, which, I mean, all these stars do today, there's still going to be a dozen teams lining up for him. You're still going to get plenty of value for Joel Embiid, as long as it's just a trade request that I want out. Because there's every team's going to line up and want him.
Well, that's why I said, is it really like set that we don't even want that? Maybe we want that. Maybe we need that.
There's no other path. There's no path, because realistically, what's going to happen is this James Harden thing is going to play out like it plays out. Whatever may come. Even if they trade him, they're not going to get a lot for him. And this season, they're not good enough to do anything. And Joel's going to ask out next year. It's just going to happen.
And he's going to be the next Charles Barkley.
So just get a head start on it.
Right. So I honestly, I don't know if he'll ever win a ring or not, but he still has, and I think, injury aside, let's just assume he doesn't get hurt. I think he's got 2 big time prime years still ahead of him before he totally starts to go downhill. And unless someone offers me their franchise guy, I am not trading him to the East anywhere. I don't care. I can't do that.
I've been on the Oklahoma City train. I think
That's fine.
Again, will Joel not want to go there? I'm not sure, but like
Well, he
that's a
doesn't have.
perfect
I mean,
fit
he
for
don't have a
him.
say in it.
I know, but these players all of a sudden now they do. I want to go back to the Harden situation because I have a couple of questions in my head that I've been thinking about all day and I can't square them up. So James Harden comes out and calls Daryl Morey a liar. And he says that he had a promise and Daryl didn't fulfill it. Are we sure that the promise was that he was going to take care of him after this season? Because here's my question.
I'm thinking the same thing you were. Go ahead.
If you have a handshake agreement, quote unquote, that's what everybody's thinking, that you're going to get a max contract from the Sixers in this offseason, and that's what you agreed to, then why the hell are you floating these rumors out there about you wanting to go to Houston halfway through the year? Why are all these leaks coming out from your camp that, oh, James is infatuated with Houston and James has an interest in going back to Houston? Yo, you got an agreement. You got a handshake deal. What are you worried about?
Well, and that's a great point. And I'm wondering if the liar component comes from the fact that he opted in with the understanding that he would be traded.
That's what I'm thinking too. Is like, did Daryl Morey say to James, if you opt in, we will trade you? And now they're saying we won't trade you.
And if that's the case,
I might be side James.
Yes, Morey's dead wrong.
And all of a sudden, again, Daryl's overrating James and goes to the trade market and says, I can't get shit for this guy. What am I going to do now? But again, we're just speculating. I just don't understand why James, again, there's so many questions, why James would float all those rumors if he had a handshake deal. I also don't understand, if you were so hell-bent on leaving this place, why just opt out? I know you're not going to sign anywhere you really want to go, but
the money that Brooklyn offered him, the $200 million extension that he basically laughed at and disregarded, he'll never see that money again.
Never.
That money's gone.
He thinks he's delusional. He thinks he deserves it.
That money is so gone. And it's I mean, from a human element, it's a shame because you hate to see people just do stupid stuff and make destructive decisions that are going to screw up their life. But hey, he's also a grown ass man. He knows this game. He's not a rookie. He knows how this works, and he has made bad bets. Morey, another one, made bad bets, and now they're making bad bets on each other, and they can't get rid of each other.
Where's I going with this? From a league standpoint, I think there needs to be something said for, you should not be able to have a player option, which basically says, do you want to continue this contract and be a part of this team? And you decide yes, and then 3 seconds later you are able to demand a trade.
Well, the CBA
logically that doesn't add up.
Yeah, I mean the CBA's done though, unless they make an amendment to it. But I mean they just redid one. So what they could do is just have it where, like a free agent, just have the same clause where if you opt back into a deal or into a current deal, it works the same as if you are signing a new one where you can't be traded until January 15th.
Right, or something along those lines. Like, it doesn't make sense. Again,
for a full year.
You have an opportunity to leave, and you are choosing to stay, and then saying, "I need to leave." That's what he did.
And he didn't want to bet on himself again by opting out and taking $20 million from wherever, or $40 million from a team that's not good just to pay to get a box office guy. So he, like I said, bad bets all around here. And the Sixers fans like us are just stuck holding the bag, so to speak, where it's just like we don't even know what we really have anymore. And
we don't have anything. And
it's frustrating. And we got a guy like Nick Nurse who I believe in. And as much as I wasn't a fan of him with the Raptors, I do respect and always have respected him as a coach. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if he even knows. And he may have been lied to. Who knows? Maybe Daryl lied to him too. Now we're all stuck here in the same boat. And we all, the common denominator is Daryl Morey's played us into a corner.
The issue with trading James Harden, as more I thought about it today, is this. And this is the difference between him and Ben Simmons. With Ben Simmons, you could still sell a young player under contract was not in the right situation for him. You could have these rebuilding teams still had an interest in Ben Simmons at that time. Again, we're going back in time here. There's no rebuilding teams out there that have an interest in James Harden. Zero. These young teams, they don't have any interest. Then you have these championship level teams. Again, you're looking for Ben Simmons. Can he be a piece is like for Brooklyn, where we put him aside two superstars and he just is our defensive guy and he does these little things. The problem with a championship team trying to acquire James Harden is you have to model your offense around James Harden because he can't just come in and be a plug and play guy. That's not who he is. No, so at this point, you're stuck with basically a handful of teams that are in the middle that are looking for a guy who, if everything turns out right, he can lead us over the top. And I made a list of them. And you tell me if you think of anybody else. Maybe Chicago.
You mean this is a list of teams that can use Harden, you're saying?
Like maybe I could see being interested in Harden. Just from the perspective of we've been stuck in the middle for so long, maybe James gives us a little boost.
You said for the year.
Yeah, for the year. Because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. So
you're not going to get a lot back for it then, for a rental.
So I have one trade offer. I'll get to the team I think is the best fit at the end. I didn't do any other players, but I'm just giving you some potential names. Chicago was one. Toronto, I said probably not, but maybe. They have Schroeder at point guard, but I don't know if they're in win mode now anyway.
No, he ain't going.
New Orleans, could New Orleans use him?
I mean, CJ's played with Dame before, and Dame's been a guy that you really have to build your offense around.
Yeah. Like I don't know if CJ's a pure point guard. Like they could use a little.
No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and then with Ingram and Zion, and yeah, I mean that'd be all right.
I have Miami as a list, but I know they're infatuated with Dame, but obviously they could use a point guard with Vincent being gone and Lowry being the other guy there. The team I think that's the best fit besides, I don't even think the Clippers are a great fit, to be honest with you, with Westbrook. Well, you're gonna hate this trade offer, but again, I'm trying to be realistic.
This is back to Chicago, or is this
the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Okay, I've heard them.
And the trade would be, again, you mentioned two guys on expiring. Both these guys are expiring. The trade would be Mike Conley and Kyle Anderson.
My God.
That's what you're looking at. Something like that, dude.
Kyle Anderson's the slowest dude I've ever seen in a professional uniform of any sport. I don't know how he's still in the league. I really don't. But I mean, I know he has value because he does whatever, but he's got the slowest shot of all time.
If you think you're getting anything more than that, I think you're crazy.
But we thought that about Ben Simmons too, and we ended up getting.
But Ben was different because you could still talk yourself into what he could become. James Harden's past that peak.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I'm coming from a perspective of, I don't want to say forgiveness, but just really curiosity now that we've removed ourselves from this situation. So I don't know if you've heard recently, but I think it was in Australia, been in an interview and talked about the Sixers situation, admitted that he was wrong.
Who did? Ben
Simmons did, yeah.
I didn't hear this.
He admitted he had handled it wrong on his end. However, he did also say that he was not the only one at fault, and other people within the situation, coaching staff, players, also screwed up. Basically, he said, like, I ain't the only one that messed up. If I could do it over again, I would do it differently. If I could dunk it, I would have dunked it. If I could handle it differently after the game, I'd have handled it differently after the game. But I'm not the only one at fault. He's never had an issue, at least not publicly, with the Philly fans. His issue's always been behind those closed doors with the team. My question is, would you accept Ben Simmons back here?
No, because he's not. No, Joel wouldn't. There's too much issue there. Ben Simmons is never going to be the player that we thought he would be. And I don't want to lock myself into. No, I'm out on that. I don't want to run that back. That would be a disaster for the entire fan base. We would boycott again. He wouldn't fit in the locker room after everything that he did. That's a disaster. I would not do that.
No, I agree. I was just seeing where your head was at. I agree. I wouldn't do it either. But like, I could see that being a movement soon, where some people are going to be like, let's just bring Ben, especially if Embiid wants out officially. Then I could definitely see people saying, let's just run this back with Ben. We'll be able to get him probably for cheap. have him next to Maxey, and I think those two will be a great fit together. I will say that. I think that will be an awesome fit. But is it worth it? Probably not under the circumstance currently. I was just seeing what you thought about that.
The other difference between the Ben Simmons and James Harden thing is what we mentioned earlier is Ben wasn't around the team. So the team was able to stay afloat without Ben Simmons because there wasn't a distraction. This is a ticking time bomb that you need to get rid of before it blows up because James Harden is going to show up to practice.
Before it blows up, he just called your president of operations a liar in China.
Right. All right. It's blown up. But like there's more bombs coming from all accounts. I mean,
that was a warning shot. That was
I think it was Ramona Shelburne said today that James has pretty much made his plan to make the entire training camp a nightmare for all Sixers. So again, is he destroying his own? The funny thing is James and Daryl are as locked at the hip as they were for so many years. They're taking each other down, and they're both going down together, and they don't realize it.
Right, and we're the commodity, not the commodities. What's the word I'm looking for? We're the innocent bystanders in it.
Right, the resultant damage,
collateral damage, really.
Collateral damage. That's probably the better term.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why I say it's sad as Sixers fans and me, and other season ticket holders, things like that. Like, I'm still in limbo. Like, I don't know if I can go down to those games right now. Like, what am I really getting out of it? Just to see him beat for a few more games for another season, or Maxey's. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we're all wrong. I hope that they ball out and they play in spite of Harden and they do great things. But I just, it's hard to see that.
Before we get into the Joel response, and I do want to talk about that, my final question to you is, do they need to get rid of Daryl? And if they got rid of Daryl, would James come back? And would we just be open to running that back? Yeah.
I think that he's been that clear. His issue is Daryl Morey. It's not Philly. It's not the Sixers. It's not Embiid. It's not. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's he feels like he was betrayed by Daryl Morey. And let's be honest. What is Daryl Morey done concretely done in the NBA as a in this current role that he's had with Houston, with us? Like, I know he had done a little bit with Boston. I think he might have been an assistant or something like that, GM or whatever it was at the time. But what has he done when he's been in control of an organization that warrants all of this?
He hasn't won a championship, I can tell you that.
He has not.
He's built some nice teams, but again, they were built around prime James Harden, who was an MVP player, and I don't know if he ever made any significant moves to bring that team to the next level. He kept trying, whether it was acquiring Chris Paul, acquiring Russell Westbrook, trying the small ball thing with Covington at the 5. All those things, were moves that he tried. But again, I would agree with you. I don't think he's done anything tremendous. He did clean up. When he took over the Sixers, they were a mess. That was after the 2020 season. He managed to get off Horford's contract. Right. He traded Josh Richardson for Seth Curry, which was a great deal at the time. But I mean, he hasn't gotten us to where we need to go.
If Embiid, or when Embiid does request out, whether it's tonight or a year from now, which, by the way, his re-up deal just starts now.
Yeah.
So he's still, I mean, he literally he's just starting, I believe, his new deal that he re-signed. I think it was last summer, wasn't it? Or 2 summers ago, or last summer?
2 summers ago, I think.
When he does that, is the fan base upset, or is it understanding under his circumstance? Because for me, I honestly totally understand. I can't be mad at him. What am I mad at?
So let's rewind to what happened last night before we jump into that. So obviously the news breaks. You hear the one player we didn't mention that also showed his support for Harden, not surprisingly, was PJ Tucker. Put out a thing on Twitter saying, "I'm not an acrobat, so I'm not flipping on my guy," and had a picture of him and Harden. But Joel Embiid goes onto his Twitter profile.
I like that pun game. That pun game was nice.
Yeah, right. Goes into his Twitter profile, takes out his location as Philadelphia, takes out the slogan saying processing, and changes his picture from a Sixers and NFT to just a picture of himself. So again, what does that mean? Joel has shown that he's trolled us many, many times. Is it a troll job? Is it something that where he's taking James' side? I
Well,
mean,
let's not forget too. A couple weeks ago, or whatever it was, early in the offseason, when he had the moment when he said that he wanted to win a championship in Philly or wherever it was. So that
right.
was also an odd answer.
And like, what's odd about it to me is, I would have to imagine that again, if there was a handshake deal before the season with Daryl Morey and James Harden, that the players weren't aware of it in some respect, right? James didn't let out the bag that I took the cut, but they're going to take care of me.
Well,
In
because if
casual
they did,
conversation, huh?
that's technically against the rules.
It is, but like I can't imagine it didn't come up in casual conversation
I
with
mean,
at the
off the
bar.
record, probably, yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's what I mean. I'm not saying
technically,
on the record. I'm talking off the
yeah.
record. So why now are we like, just going to rebel against the Sixers because this is coming out? Clearly, they didn't offer him a contract 3 months ago. So why now is all of a sudden because he called him a liar and he called him out? Now all of a sudden there's a war against the organization. Does that make sense?
Again, I don't think it's the organization. I think it's Daryl Morey. I think that these guys are upset at what's happened. I think that Embiid and Harden are cool. Like
Yeah, no doubt.
they were at the whiteout party a few weeks ago at Ruben's house.
James wasn't at his wedding though.
No, that is true. Well, he was in China though, I think, wasn't he?
No, he was at the bar with PJ.
Or no, he was with Bun B, right? With the burgers.
Yeah. So maybe that's because Daryl was at the wedding.
I don't know, maybe. No, I don't think Daryl was.
Daryl was there.
Was he there? Okay.
Yeah,
No,
Daryl
he
was
was.
there.
Daryl wasn't at the whiteout. That's what it was.
Right.
What was I going to say with that? Oh, so yeah, I think it's with Morey, the beef. I don't think it's with any of the players or the city or organization. I think it's just that he's pissed at Daryl Morey and Embiid's going to bat for him. PJ's going to bat for him. I don't know if Daniel House has a social media or whatever, and I'm sure he said something on Montrez, all his boys. Listen, for Korkmaz has been like, I've been trying to get out of here for years, cuz like I don't know what you talk about. I've been trying to get out of here. They won't let me out.
And you know who doesn't have time for any of it?
Who?
Josh Harris.
No,
He's
he does.
down in DC doing his thing,
He's trying to build a football team, giving away game balls in preseason games.
Yeah. So you think he wants to go about a GM search at this point in time?
That's very true.
He doesn't want to go about doing all that. So
Very
Daryl's going to be here. But all that said, let's get back to your question. What is the response to Joel Embiid if he asked out? He'd get booed when he came back.
I don't think that's unfair.
But why is it unfair? He's just as responsible, if not more, for this team's failures than all these other guys as well. It's not like, was he dealt a bad hand? Sure.
Hands.
Along the way, he's been dealt a bad hand.
Plural.
Huh?
Plural. Hands. Plural. He's been jerked around with this team several times since he's been here.
But he's never, at the end of his career, if this is it, he underachieved. And that's tough to say, but he did.
I don't agree with that.
How can you not agree with that? He never won a shit.
So let's rewind. In 2016, his first year active, he was on the minute restriction. They handcuffed him. They wouldn't let him play. Against his will, it wouldn't let him play. But he was a good soldier. He did it. All right. You go through.
Wait, hold on. Rightfully so, a minutes restriction. The guy hadn't played basketball in 2 years and had a foot and a knee that we thought were going to blow up at any moment.
But once you saw he was okay in the beginning, I mean, there was games. I'm trying to remember which game it was when I was down there his rookie year. We were going to overtime with somebody.
Yeah, Memphis.
They sat,
I think it was Memphis.
And they sat him, and he kicked the chair.
Agreed. It was kid gloves, but he also had never played a season more than like 25 games.
Well, it cost him winning Rookie of the Year that year.
Well, he got hurt. He got hurt.
But I'm saying,
he only played 30 games.
The Houston game where he, ironically enough, where he had the ESPN showcase and then he didn't play again.
Yeah, I was at that game actually.
The same, but the other thing is,
okay, go ahead.
The Jimmy Butler situation. You had the Ben Simmons situation. You had the Colangelo situation. You now have the James Harden situation. You've had all these situations off the court that this guy has been a good soldier about and hasn't raised hell, hasn't requested a trade, hasn't done. In fact, he's been total opposite, very supportive of the organization. And I think he's a human being. I think he's like, enough is enough. I can't do it again.
I think it'll depend on you made good points. I think it'll depend on the way he goes about it and how it all goes down. I think.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
As much as I think that the best path to this team is trading him, it would still upset me if he asked out. And I know that's contradicting.
Well, because you want to leave the relationship, you don't want to get dumped. I mean,
Yes.
that's how everybody is. Nobody wants to be fired; they want to just quit. So you want to be the one to cut the ties. You don't want to have the ties cut. It's human nature.
I think I would not boo him personally. I also wouldn't cheer for. I'd be kind of neutral, but I think he would get booed because of the way it would eventually play itself out. Because I think it would at that point. He would look like a quitter. That's what he would look like, and this city has never responded well to that.
Well, no, and he did win an MVP for us. He did have 3 MVP caliber seasons for us.
Sure.
Obviously, the playoff situation is how it's played out, and I get that. And I know he's the common denominator in that we have left as far as, anyone or anything that's held us back. He's the common denominator for all those situations. But I mean, if we had a total, size of games played, I don't have the numbers in front of me, Joel Embiid's played, and the total amount of games where he hasn't shown up, I mean, you're going to probably be with under 10% of games where you're like, what were you doing?
Yeah, and
I had 85 to 90% of the time
of that 10% would be in the playoffs.
But nonetheless, 85 to 90% of that time was unbelievable. And boo him, you could be disappointed in how it turned out. And I'm not saying you gotta cheer the guy and be like you were this and that, but I think to boo him would not be fair.
So let me 2 players pop directly into my head as far as somewhat comparable, and one's going to be a little bit before our time because I'm not sure we remember the reaction. But Charles Barkley,
that's what I mentioned earlier. Yeah,
he was very similar situation, and those teams weren't competitive at all.
No,
and
it's very similar too in the sense that Chuck, to this day, says he never would have wanted to leave had he thought the team could build a winner. That was the number one reason why he left. It wasn't because he wanted to go to a warmer climate or make more money or this and that. He solely wanted to win, and that team was not in a state to be able to do that.
And I think the city recognized that, and which is why he's still so beloved here.
Correct.
And the other guy, and this is a reach, but like Donovan McNabb, a guy who was McNabb never reached Embiid level as far as talent, but as good as Donovan was, best quarterback in Eagles history, but has a history of laying eggs in big games. And the reaction to McNabb when he came back wasn't favorable. And I know he had some personality traits that rub people the wrong way, but so does Joel.
Yeah, but I think the difference is McNabb actually, I would argue, was reached a higher pinnacle than Embiid because of the fact that he is. I mean,
McNabb never was MVP.
I'm saying it's a very small argument you can make that he wasn't the best quarterback of all time, which is the most important position on the football field in Eagles history. You can make a clear argument that Embiid is not the best Sixer of all time. I think there's a difference with that. But as far as not reaching the pinnacle of winning a championship and this and that, also McNabb's been to the Super Bowl. Embiid has not been to a finals,
right?
Let alone an NBA finals.
But I'm saying the response when McNabb came back was not positive.
No.
So
I think all that too was because the Eagles were notorious for holding on to guys too long. They held on to him probably too long. And when he came back, I think he did win a game against us with Washington, but we weren't looking at prime McNabb against us. I think it was more like you said, a lot of people just never really vibed with him off the field. And I think it showed its ugly head on the field when he left.
How does this thing end up playing out?
I don't know.
You gotta give me
I honestly, I really don't know. I tell students that I don't know should only be said for the questions of, is there life on Mars or what's the meaning of life? But the third question might be, what are the Sixers doing?
So
I'd imagine that I'd be floored if Embiid pushed the envelope already and won it out before the year started at this point. But I think that if they come out, Harden's a mess, and they start off like, 8-12 or 10-15, it might get weird.
do you think James Harden is on the roster opening night?
I hope not. I mean, Morey, we know he'll hold on to a guy. Like he did it for Ben. He waited for Harden, and
But it was different. It was different. Ben
I
wasn't
know,
there.
but like I know, but I unless management steps in, which they should, but like you said, they're not really. Harris isn't really interested right now in this, probably. But I believe more that Morey would hold on to him than I do that he would just give him up for nothing. I don't think.
Are they going to suspend him? Do you want him on the floor? Because we've seen that. You've seen it in Houston, and you've seen it in Brooklyn, where he just dogged it.
Well, like I said, if he does that, it'd be a fool because this situation is a little bit different than those were.
But yeah, he'd be a fool. But he'd also be
may not get that.
He'd also be a fool to call his GM a liar on social media in the world. I don't think he realizes what he's doing. And the effect that it's going to have.
Well, his team.
Again, we've seen him get it. You've seen him get his way in Houston. Go out there, play like shit. They trade me. You've seen him dog it in Brooklyn, get his way, they trade me. He thinks it's going to happen again, and then he'll go somewhere and ball out and get his contract. Like that's in his head.
I'd love to know what Elton Brand thinks. Elton Brand is like the forgotten man. He's the GM. I don't know. I'd love to know what he would think about this. But honestly, I think that if I had to make a choice, I would say that they find a way to deal him before. I don't know about training camp, but before this opening night.
To deal him or to deal with him? Deal him,
to trade him.
I would think so too. And
I think the closer it gets to the season, I think management, when they're more around, is going to be like, "Yo, this can't be. This stinks. This is a bad odor to it. We got to get rid of the stench. It's too bad."
Right. Do you remember when Ben came to those couple practices and Doc had to kick him out?
Yeah.
That's what it would be like every single day.
But the difference is some of them guys got Harden's back. Ben was a lone wolf.
That's true. You're also right about that. 100%.
So that's the dangerous thing about that too.
So is Patrick Beverley going to be our starting point guard on opening night?
Yo, Pat's already riding for Philly. Did you see what he tweeted?
Yeah.
Philly always steps up for adversity.
Yeah.
He's already riding. Man,
I think he might be the starting point guard opening night.
Why not?
Him, Maxey, and then they should just ship Tucker with Harden wherever the hell they go.
I agree with that.
And then
Korkmaz's still going to be here.
Paul's going to play the 4, baby. Paul's playing the 4 this year.
Dude, they might start Paul.
Fuck it. Let's just do it.
Why not? Let's just go crazy. Let's get nuts.
Oh man. Dude, we picked such a bad team to root for, man. It's
one thing we haven't heard is from Tobias. At least I haven't seen.
The what?
We haven't heard from Tobias at all on social media or anything about this. So I wonder where his head's at.
Because Tobias is a logical person who's probably like, get me the hell out of here.
I'm getting 39 million, bro. I ain't messing that up.
I'm good. I ain't saying nothing. All right, last question. Did you what's his verdict on the season tickets? Did you renew?
I mean, you got to renew by like February, but you can always stop at any time and then you just work with them as far as, the credits or whatever you want to do with it. But it's right now, like I said, we're very much in the middle here where we're trying to figure out what's going to happen. I'll be honest, and I'm getting a little bit into another segment we're going to have later on, but I watched a couple clips of some old Sixers games from the last 10 years, and I got nostalgic, man. Like that sense of hope, that sense of going down there and seeing like, well, next year we're going to have second year for this guy and third year for that. Like, I miss that. And as much as I want to win a title with Embiid and with these guys, the next best thing at this point is to bring that back. I want to dream again with these guys, as corny as it sounds. But
what's the white boy's name? Who's the truth? He just reclassified. He's gonna be in the 2025 draft.
Oh, Cooper Flag or whatever.
Yeah. Let's tank it out for Cooper Flag.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if we have a pick for that year, but
so I was looking this morning. So in 2025, the pick goes to Oklahoma City, but it's protected 1 through 6.
Oh well, then we're in.
Tank it out, baby.
Yeah, we're in.
Tank it out.
I'm in on that.
So we're all on board for the Cooper Flag. So we got to trade Embiid for a bunch of picks. Nobody good. Trade Harden for nothing, and then let Maxey go for 27 points a night, and we'll go.
I'm willing to overpay Maxey at this point. Give him
We'll
the
go,
super rookie max.
Yeah,
have
we'll
him be the only guy we're paying.
If Maxey's getting 27 a night, we're 20 and 62. Like we're.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%.
But all right, that'll be it for the Sixers talk. There's plenty more to come, as I think we have just started this fire, believe it or not. But jump into segment 2. We're going to continue our divisional preview with the stinky NFC South. So stay on board. And if you're not interested in the NFC South, segment 3 is going to be a barn burner as well. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. Welcome back to segment 2. We're going to dive into the NFC South. Chris, this may be the worst division in football.
We're going to dive into it, all right off a cliff.
This is bad. As always, we will go from worst to first based on the Vegas odds, and we will start with those Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 8-9 last year. They won the division, got a home playoff game with an 8-9 record. Over under 6.5. I mentioned they made the playoffs. They lost the wild card game to Dallas. Tom Brady era is over. They finished 15th in offense last year. They were 9th in defense, so the peripherals aren't too bad. But after week 2, they didn't win a game by more than 6 points. They had $74 million in dead cap space this year, so they couldn't really do anything. Baker Mayfield is in, or is it Kyle Trask, the second-round pick from a couple of years ago? Chris, where are you at on Tampa?
So I was just looking earlier. ESPN has Baker ranked the 32nd fantasy quarterback, and then Kyle Trask is 33rd. So they're right there. They don't know who's going to get it. Listen, Tampa's. I mentioned this in the previous segment we had with the receivers. Mike Evans, I think, is doomed. Part of the fact is that, with Godwin still there and no quarterback, and I just think a lot of teams are going to really bracket him out. And their O-line is not good. Their O-line is, they've got Tristan Wirfs, who's awesome. Other than that, they lost Donovan Smith. They lost Shaq Mason. Two of the guys they picked up, Matt Filer and Luke Gadecki, are awfully graded from last year. So, if you can't, we always talk about the games won in the trenches, and you don't have a great quarterback as it is, let alone put them behind a bad O-line. I think everybody's screwed on that side of the ball. Honestly, I don't see it happening. Defensively, I don't really see a lot of difference makers anymore at this stage in the game. I have them. What was the over under for them?
6.5.
Yeah, so I had them at 5-12.
Okay,
I've been debating on making that my best bet, but I'll hold on to that for a second.
Okay, I am following suit with you. I was reading some notes on them today, and the GM had a quote that struck me, and basically said, "When we acquired Tom, we went all in, and we knew the bill was going to have to be paid at some point.
That's
great. That time is now."
That's a great quote.
And more power to them. They won a Super Bowl, but now
they had the greatest quarterback of all time with them.
Yeah, and they had a situation where they spent a lot of money. They have a lot of dead cap space and not a lot of talent on this team. And I have the under. I have them at 4-13. I have it as my best bet, so lock that in. And I think they're a potential to be the worst team in the NFL.
They damn sure need a quarterback. So if they're going to be that bad and be in the market for that number 1 pick for the draft coming up in 2024, it's a good year for it. Yeah. So yeah, I can't see them winning
7 games.
No.
I mean, I know the division's soft, so the schedule gets a little, there's some winnable games in division, but I don't see 7 wins.
I mean, they were outscored last year with Tom Brady.
Yeah, agreed.
So, I mean, without him, they scored 313 points, 358 they gave up. And that, like I said, with Brady, so with a combination of Trask and Mayfield, I don't even know if they get to 300 points.
Yeah, no, they're not.
And that O-line.
They're not going to be good. All right,
so
let's
I think
move on.
5 and 12 is a friendly.
All right, so we're both on the under. We'll go to Carolina. 7 and 10 last year. Over under this year, about the same, 7.5. It was their 5th straight losing season. Your boy Matt Rule got fired halfway through. Frank Reich is in this year. I have a trivia question for you, Chris.
All right.
This, assuming Bryce Young, who's the number 1 pick in the draft, is their leading passer this year, which should be, barring any injuries or anything crazy happening. It will be the 6th straight year that Carolina has had a different person lead them in passing yards. Can you name the other 5 guys from the last 5 years who have led the Carolina Panthers in passing yards?
5 years. So they go back to 2018. I guess Cam Newton.
Cam Newton was 5 years ago. So yes, he's on there.
All right. Baker.
Baker was last year, so that's 2.
All right. Is my man Temple's own Philip PJ Walker on there?
No, good guess. Not on there.
Darnold.
Darnold was before Mayfield, so he got 3. 2 left to go.
Damn. What the hell else was there?
I'll give you a hint. One is a guy who's a backup for a long time and just managed to play a lot one year. And the other guy is a guy who's been a starter in this league, was kind of bounced around for a while.
Was Colt McCoy there?
No. Good guess.
That wasn't one of Fitzpatrick's teams.
No. Black guy bounced around a bunch.
No one's bounced around more than Josh Johnson, but I know it's not him.
It's not him.
How has he not been on the pit? He's been on 14 or 16 teams.
I'm going to give you the backup because you're not going to get him. Kyle Allen.
Okay.
But then the other guy is the middle guy. That's the black guy, like I said, who's bounced around to a ton of teams.
Oh, man. Teddy Bridgewater.
Teddy Bridgewater is correct. So this will be the 6th straight season with a new quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. Out playmakers DJ Moore and Dante Foreman. In Miles Sanders, Adam Thielen, Von Bell. I'll start. I like the changes that they're making. Defensively, they took a step back last year. They were really good the year before that. I was very, very bullish on this team last year. If you remember, I kind of bit into a Baker bounce back year, Christian McCaffrey, and that defense. With that being said, I'm not fully on board with Bryce Young. I'm a little concerned about his size. The offensive line's not great. I think this team has potential, but I still have them under. I have them 6 and 11. I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be feisty, but I still think they're a little bit away from winning football games.
Well, Carolina's O-line ranked in the top 3rd at least for pass block win.
Really?
And yeah, but I mean, it's not like that's elite. I mean, I think they were like 11th. So
last year.
Yeah, so they barely got in there, but nonetheless, that's where they ranked out at. Ajiro Evero being their defensive coordinator that Frank Reich brought in. He was actually a highly touted defensive coordinator. So we'll see how that pans out for them. I like J.C. Horn a lot, Brian Burns a lot. Derek
They got
Brown.
playmakers.
They got some guys. They got Adam Thielen probably 2 years too late. Shark, I've always liked, but he's like a Reggie Brown kind of guy to me. Like, he's a nice little player, but you can't really rely upon him to be a difference maker for your team. The rookie Mingo they have for the receivers. I like Bryce Young, actually. I'm not going to get bit on the size thing. There's been too many guys that have been and are still decent that aren't the tallest guys in the world. But if you've got the IQ and you can move and yet the arm, and he's got all 3 of those, I'm okay. He's not like Kyler Murray where you have to make sure he's not playing the PS5 all night and all that kind of stuff. For all accounts, he's not that kind of guy. I got them winning 7 games. And I want to go more, but I'm going to respect the game in the sense that most rookie quarterbacks, especially in this kind of situation, aren't going to turn a team around overnight. So I think that they'll basically flirt around with what they were at last year, but I think it'll feel better for them. I think they'll have some flashes. Miles is a nice player.
I think Miles is going to be a sleeper in fantasy this year.
I do too, actually. I think he can have a nice year for them this year. So I like I said, I give them 7 wins, but I think it'll be a good 7 wins. And they got Jesse Bates too, which is nice, a nice add, and Bud Dupree. Again, Calais Campbell, they might have got a little bit too late, also like Thielen.
No, Jesse Bates in Atlanta.
I thought he. Oh no, you're right. No, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing here. Bates and Dupree were Atlanta. That's right.
Yeah.
It was right above the Panthers thing. No, yeah, that's true. So yeah, so I don't. I think
I'm with you. I think it's going to be one of those things where they're not going to win a ton of games, but you're going to see on your schedule at Carolina, and you're kind of going to be like, we could lose this game.
Yes, you got to. You can't have step a team like Carolina. They're young and dangerous.
Yeah, agreed. So we're on the same page. So two teams in a row we agree with. Let's move on.
Von Bell, that's the guy. That's who it was. Von Bell. That was
correct.
Not Bates. Von Bell.
Let's move on to Atlanta. I mean, we've been on we got a little bit of a taste from you a second ago. So this is Chris. This is a team that before I went into the Vegas numbers, I said I'm taking the over with the Atlanta Falcons. I think they're going to be a sleeper team. I think they have a lot of good things going. And then I went in and their over-unders 8.5. Shocked me how high that number was. They're 7-10 last year. They've had 5 straight losing seasons. Although last year was a success. We talked here on the podcast that we thought they were going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. I think we both had them winning 3 or 4 games. They ended up pulling out 7. They only had a minus 21 point differential. Quarterback's still a problem. They have Desmond Ridder, the 3rd-round pick that's going to go into the year as the starter. They do have Taylor Heineke sitting in the wings. Not that he's anything great, but he's won football games in the past. 1st-round pick, Bijan Robinson. We've had plenty of discussion about him on the podcast already. They added Jesse Bates, Calais Campbell, Onyemata, Jeff Okudu. They've made plenty of defensive upgrades. They still have Drake London. They still have Kyle Pitts. I think they have a great nucleus. They ran the football more than any team in the NFL last year, which helped them get to those 7 wins. I just think the hype train's moving a little bit too fast for my liking. I think they're going to be similar to Carolina. They're going to be a good team, but they're not. I'm not there yet because of the quarterback play. That's the problem to me. I have them at 8-9, so I have them under 8.5. I just don't see them getting to 9 wins. I think that line's a little beefy.
Yeah, I actually have them at 8-9 also. I'm going to make that my best bet that they're under 8.5. I went through a very similar process as you with trying to grade out these guys. And on the surface, Bijan Robinson, who's going to be an elite running back in this league. Drake London is a very good receiver. Kyle Pitts is going to be, if he can get the ball thrown to him, an elite tight end. But I'll die on the hill that Bijan pick for them was terrible. They still had the 23rd, I think, or so. Actually, might be even worse than that. Ranked defense, and they, like I said, they signed Bates and Dupree, but like they could have used a difference maker early with that pick, with that 8th pick in the draft. They could have used Jalen Carter.
Yep.
And they punted on it, and they took Bijan just for the box office aspect of it. They didn't need him. I mean, Algier had a really good rookie year for him last year. They didn't need another running back.
Unless they think he's Adrian Peterson.
And even if he is, I mean, Adrian Peterson never won a ring.
Yeah, so, but he was a difference maker.
He's been an elite and Bijan will be an elite player. Like I said, he'll be an elite running back in his league. But what's that going to do for them? You need a quarterback in this league, and you need a defense in this league. You need trenches in this league. Desmond Ridder is not, to me, he's a guy. He's going to be in the league for a while, but he's a guy. He's going to probably be fiddling between a spot starter and a backup for his whole career. And you need a quarterback. I think they're a quarterback away from being a playoff team. I will say that.
Agreed.
Because as bad as their defense is, their offense could be really good.
Really good.
And so because of that, I respect them enough that that could get them into the playoffs. I
But
mean,
they did pick up guys on defense. They got again, you add a Jesse Bates, a Calais Campbell, a David Onyemata. I never say that right. A Jeff Okuda. Like they picked up guys to try and improve the defense.
Well, Jeff Okuda, though, I mean,
Yeah.
the Lions gave up on him real fast.
Yeah, he was. I mean, first round pick, high potential, but never really fulfilled it. You never know in a new spot.
Yeah, so I don't know I don't know what his deal is going to be, but like I said, they're going to probably be a fun team. But I don't expect them to make. I think their ceiling is 8 wins. I think I agree.
Go. If I was a betting man, and I felt bullish on that number, like I thought the Falcons were going to, instead of betting the over 8.5, I would just bet them to win the division because I think if everything pans out right, they could win the division pretty easily.
Well, I mean, it's very much up for grabs. I mean, even if you had 6 wins in this division, you might win it. I mean, it's not, it's the prettiest pig in the barn situation with these guys. So,
absolutely,
they need it. Once they get a quarterback, and they're another team that will benefit well from tanking this year to get a quarterback, or at least getting some assets to trade to get a quarterback high in the draft. But I mean, they're obviously not going to do that because they got enough guys that they want to make things exciting for their fans, however many they have. But the Bijan thing to get people in the seats, it's Atlanta, it's professional, the National Football League. They care more about the Bulldogs than they do about the Falcons. Even though Athens is a drive away, but that's a college area, big time. They don't really care about the professional football. So it's going to take a lot more than Bijan to get those people in the seats, I think. But like I said, 8 wins, 7-8 wins. I'll go at 8.
All right, so we're both at 8 and 9 for the Falcons. Let's move on to the final team in the division, the New Orleans Saints. 7-10 last year. Dennis Allen's first season taking over for Sean Payton was pretty much a disaster. They underachieved in a bad division. They were forced to start Andy Dalton for 14 games. Their defense was still very, very good, 5th in the NFL, and it's been good for the past handful of years. They make the big splash of the offseason, signing Derek Carr to a 4-year, $150 million deal. They have very talented players on the offensive side. Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams, Michael Thomas, if he stay healthy. By all accounts, he is this preseason. Even Rashid Shaheed, Foster Moreau. They have the talent on offense to be very, very good. Again, with the defense being as good as it was, they did lose a couple pieces. Shy Tuttle, Marcus Davenport, the aforementioned David Onyemata, Caden Ellis. They've lost some pieces on that defensive side of the ball. I think this is probably the best team in the division. With that said, I've trashed Derek Carr over and over on this podcast. I think that he could put up numbers. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to do it in a winning manner. I have them winning the division, but I have them under the total. I have them at 9-8 because I just can't see a team led by Dennis Allen and Derek Carr winning double-digit games. I'm not putting my money on that at any point in time. I'm not 100% confident in the pick, to be honest with you. They could very easily, given the schedule, get to that point. But like I said, I'm never putting my money on those two guys combining for double-digit wins.
What was the over-under again?
It's 9.5.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said. They're a weird. I actually do like Derek Carr. I think he's going to benefit from the change of scenery, but this is it for him. He's in the Carson Wentz kind of situation. I think if they're not good this year, I would be very concerned about Derek Carr's future as a starting NFL quarterback. Not because his skill's not there, but because he's not winning games for whatever reason. He's not winning games. He's only got one playoff game in his career and he lost.
Yeah, he's not been a winning quarterback, and I know he's been on a terrible franchise.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you're the quarterback, and they've had decent teams.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So now, it's time for the rubber to meet the road here with Derek Carr. If you are what you're trying to sell us that you are, you got to win with these guys. So I'm gonna actually hitch my wagon to Carr and go with 10-7 for the Saints and winning the division as well. I'm going to give them one more win than you have them at. I'm going to say that they'll, squeak out a win somewhere in the schedule that they probably shouldn't, just because of the fact that, they might get into a 35-34 kind of game on that turf in New Orleans. And they'll be in the playoffs. They'll probably be one and done. But, let's not forget also Kamara being out.
Just 3 games, though. People thought it was going to be 6.
Yeah, so they lucked out a little bit with that, but nonetheless, it's 3 games that they're going to miss him in the beginning. So Olave's going to step up. We'll see how it goes. I'm not as high on the weapons as you are for them. I'm more high on Carr making those guys, I won't say overachieve, but bringing out the best of them, I think. And they have a decent O-line. Their O-line was okay. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. Trevor Penning, and who's a dope, but he's okay. Ryan Ramczyk's okay. So we'll see how it goes. But I'd say 10 wins.
All right, so let's recap before we finish this up. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for me, I have them under 4-13. That's my best bet. I have the Carolina Panthers under at 6-11. I have the Atlanta Falcons under at 8-9. And I have the New Orleans Saints under at 9-8. I have 4 unders, Chris.
Yeah, I have Tampa at 5-12, Carolina 7-10, Atlanta 8-9 along with you, and I'm going to go with New Orleans winning the division with the over at 10-7. I would not be surprised though if they finish like 6-11. I wouldn't, but I think that with the division they're in, I think they're going to win a lot of games in that division. I think that they're going to win They're going to win a game or two that they probably shouldn't win against a really good team because of the circumstances. And so I think they'll find their way to get into the playoffs. Like I said, I think they'll be one and done, but we'll see.
What's your best bet?
The best bet was who was it? I think it was Atlanta. I think it was. Yeah, Atlanta was there at 8.5, right?
Okay.
So I'm gonna go under on that.
All right, so there you have it. The NFC South. Check that off the list. That's done. That was not a fun one to preview.
Yeah, we're out of here.
But we got a good segment 3. Chris, one thing we haven't mentioned, last week, I think it was Tuesday, the day it released, we saw a no-hitter.
We did.
And Michael Lorenzen for the Phillies in his first home start, there was a no-hitter. So it got us thinking, what were the best first impressions from Philadelphia athletes that we've seen in our lifetime? So we are going to go through some of the list in segment 3. We'll be right back. Welcome back to segment 3. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about the best first impressions for Philadelphia sports athletes over the past recent years. I guess in our lifetime is what we'll talk based on the no-hitter that Michael Lorenzen threw last week. Chris, just give me, first of all, just any thoughts or feelings that you had when you watched the end of the no-hitter the other night.
I was actually out. I didn't see the no-hitter, to be honest with you. I saw I saw it on replay when my Sarah had recorded the last inning so I could watch when I got home. But it's awesome. Anytime you can do something like that, it's awesome. Lorenzen's been lights out, man. I mean, if anybody, I think maybe Nola might be on notice a little bit for the playoff rotation as far as that 1 or 2 spot. If he keeps that up, I don't know how you can deny it to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been 2 starts, but it's been very positive so far.
Still very early, and the guy I don't believe has Lorenzen ever even been in the playoffs?
Not as a starting pitcher for sure.
I don't think So we'll see how that goes. But no, it was great. And that was actually a really I missed it by one night because we went to the doubleheader and the night before. And then Lorenzen throws the no-hitter the next night. And Castellanos hits his 199th and 200th career home runs on back-to-back pitches. Weston Wilson hits his first career at-bat home run. A lot of stuff was going on that night.
We had tickets. We didn't go.
See that? Miss history.
That's all right. It's fine. I got to witness it on my TV. I do think I'm happy that Topper left him in with that pitch limit because a combined no-hitter just doesn't hold the same weight as an actual no-hitter. And I'm so tired of the pitch limits. Like, the kid has a chance to make history. You leave him out there to make history.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Even if it's not history, like we've seen when Sanchez has been lights out and he's on 70 pitches and they take him out in the 6th inning. Let him play. Let him pitch.
That's a whole nother story. But all right, let's get into it. I'll start, Chris. So I have a bunch of guys. Give me what's which team do you want me to go with first? Eagles.
Well, you could. I mean, I actually I put mine in an order, but I was going to say we can go down from like if you did that, we can go like from the least to the best, I guess.
I didn't really put mine in order, so I just want to spitball. Just give me a
All
sport.
right, okay.
Give me the sport.
Let's go with the Sixers.
All right, let's go with the
Sixers. Flyers. I should have did that.
So I'll
Flyers.
start with a pretty obvious one for the Sixers. Again, this is not necessarily the first game, but we're talking the first couple of weeks, the first month, whatever it is. I'll start with Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I had him on mine.
So Jimmy's first game was actually a little bit of a disappointment. I think they lost to Orlando. I think he had something like 17 points, give or take. But if you remember, Chris, he has those 2 buzzer beaters probably within 3 weeks against Charlotte and against Brooklyn.
They weren't back to back.
I don't think they were back to back, but they may have been in the same
really
week.
Close.
I know the Brooklyn one was a Sunday night 6:00 start.
Right.
And I don't remember when the Charlotte one was. You might be right. They might have been back to back.
If it wasn't back to back, it was back to back weekends or something. It was really close together.
Same spot on the floor. That right wing where he's dribbling the clock out, and you're like, what is he doing? What is he doing? Takes a difficult step back, bang, right in the hoop. Jimmy buckets, who then probably goes on to have a pretty disappointing rest of the regular season, where he kind of only to step up in the playoffs and be the guy he was. But that first impression was we got the guy, and then we let him go.
And we had him, and we let him go. We also didn't know at the time, because I remember, and I was one of them that was a little bit pissed off and disappointed about his regular season, and saying that maybe he was a little bit overrated, and he just went nuclear in the playoffs, and he still has been going nuclear in the playoffs. When you have Jimmy Butler, you have to understand the regular season is pickup ball for him. He makes his money in the playoffs when it matters, and he did that for us. I mean, I was in the building when we were all chanting Jimmy Butler and all that kind of stuff against Toronto, and man, I still think we'd have won the chip that year.
Well, I do want to also defend the Sixers to a point. I hate that I'm doing this. Even after that playoff run, there was a lot of people who said, you can't give Jimmy Butler 5 years max at 31, right? There was a lot of people in that boat.
Yeah.
They were all wrong. But go ahead, your turn.
So he was on mine. I would you want to stay with the Sixers?
No, let's bounce around sport to sport.
Okay. So let's go old school. Take you back to the early part of the 2000s when Jim Thome came to the Phillies. If you remember, Jim Thome was a huge free agent signing, probably the biggest. I mean, you could argue until, well, I'm sure this person will come up later on in the segment, but at that part of our lives, at least, we were in high school. And that was definitely the biggest acquisition the Phillies had in our lifetime at that point in time.
It was huge.
And he was in his prime
for so long.
Yeah, and he was in his prime. And we actually, if you remember, we were waiting. Like there was a lot of speculation that offseason about the desire for Thome to be here. And they bring him in for the visit. They walk him around the I remember like it was yesterday. They walk him around the construction site of Citizens Bank Park, and they sell him on the whole thing. And he says that he would like to have his wife and his family here. And, he saw like the blue collar town that it was, and it was very similar to where he came from and this and that. And we got him, and then he showed up in a big way right off the bat. I think he had a 2 home run game against the Braves early. We went to that game. What was it? The Pirates, I think it was.
It was his first home game. I have that written down here. It was freezing cold.
Freezing cold. We were in the 700 level. And
he hits a triple his first at bat.
Yep. And
off the wall.
Yeah.
And I had awesome. that was after he went 7 for 11 in the first series of the season against the Marlins.
Yeah, he was awesome that year. He was everything. And the ironic thing about it is he would have been here and still been productive longer than he was had Ryan Howard not been blown up in the minor leagues. Because Ryan Howard wasn't a highly touted prospect,
right,
necessarily, but he got hot and just rode the wave all the way up to the major leagues, and then ended up being a superstar when he got here. At that point, we had to cut bait. But could you imagine if we had the DH rule back then?
Right. So my question, well, God, that'd be so many strikeouts against left-handed
Oh, yeah.
pitching, but
2 lefties?
so my question to you is Jim Thome's stint here as a whole is a disappointment, right? It has to go down as a disappointment. It was a
No, because
6-year, $80 million deal.
it's similar to what we talked about with Embiid earlier in the show. Like, majority of that time was awesome.
He was only good. I mean, he was only good for 2 years.
Well,
He only played 2.5.
I was gonna say, but a lot of that was he wasn't done. He just was in a situation where we had a cheaper option behind him that was just as good, if not better.
Yeah, I guess he
went on
must have
to
been
proceed.
hurt. He must have been hurt in 05
He
because
did have an injury. Yeah, he had an injury because that's how Howard got in.
right.
And
He
then
was only
he never
hitting
looked back.
207.
And then when he went to Chicago, he still hit.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. Chris, that home opener against the Pirates, do you know who started the game for the Phillies?
Oh man, was it?
I'll give you a hint. He gave up 5 runs in the first inning.
Was that 02?
No, it was 04.
No, 04.
03. It was our senior year of high school, 03.
Okay, so 03. Joe Roa?
Joe Roa. Joe Roa was the starting pitcher
Wow.
for that team. I actually looked at that box score this morning to confirm that. The Pirates lineup was actually, they had Kenny Lofton, Aramis Ramirez, Brian Giles, Jason Kendall, like they had Reggie Sanders. They had a nice little squad.
You ride the Reggie Sanders jersey back in the day.
Yeah, you did. But I had Tommy on my list as well.
Yeah, no, he was one of my favorite guys back then. He was awesome. He's still one of my favorite. I mean, I wouldn't say he was a failure. I think he was just in a weird spot in our history where it didn't make sense to hold on to him anymore.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump into me. I'll go Eagles now since we're kind of rotating around here. And first impressions can be quick, man. You walk in the bar, you see that girl, and you make that impression of what you want to see. Carson Wentz's first drive as an Eagle against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
Do you remember? He went, It was boom, 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 touchdown. And every single person in Philadelphia watching that game said, we got our quarterback.
Was that when he had it was like a 50-yard touchdown to Alshon?
No, I think
Alshon,
it was like a 25-yard touchdown pass. I'll Google what it was.
Okay, I remember it was a good substantial distance. It wasn't like a red zone.
In the corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to Google it up now. So give me a second, but give us your feelings when you.
He was. I mean, his rookie year was he was great. I mean, I'll let you know a secret. If you go back in social media to that time, I was a huge Wentz supporter. I was one of those guys after that Pittsburgh game a few weeks later when we beat the Jesus out of the Steelers. And I said, we got our quarterback. This is the guy we're going to ride into the next decade with. And full circle now, or 180, I should say, where I can't stand the guy. And I was dead wrong. But at the time, he was great. You're right. I mean, I can't take it away from him.
So here,
and he was great with minimal. I mean, he didn't have a bunch of great weapons on that team.
No. So here's that quickly. I'll run through that first drive. I'm just going to do the passing plays. Incomplete pass to start, then a 14-yard completion to Ertz, 11-yard completion to Selleck, a running play, then a 13-yard completion to Ertz, and then a 19-yard touchdown to Jordan Matthews. That was the first drive.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And they win that game 29-10. So Carson Wentz,
great. He would go on to give Ertz like 2,000 targets in 2 years.
Yeah. That was my guy. So now it's back to you. You got another sixer?
Let's see. Where do I want to go next? The guys I was looking up. I'll hold on to the Sixers for a second.
Okay.
I want to go back to the Phillies actually and go to Cliff Lee in 09.
Yeah, I have him on there. That might be the number one.
Cliff Lee, he was my number 2. Cliff Lee in 09 when we traded for him with Cleveland, and we were in San Francisco, and he started, and not only did he throw a complete game shutout, he got, I believe it was an RBI double or triple.
Off the wall in San Francisco.
Yeah. Double. And we knew he could hit a little bit from seeing him in interleague play here and there, and so we knew he was all right with the bat. But no one would have expected that in that moment in time. But Cliff Lee is a weird case in that he was, all those guys felt like they were so good, but for so short amount of time. Because with us, I'm saying, I mean, he was great with the Indians for years before we got them. But like that 09 to 11, I guess it would have been. These guys were all, and then we had the situation where Lee left and then came back and all this mess. But like that first impression was like, yo, this guy is an ace.
Yeah.
Like I remember sitting there watching and saying, like, Lee and Hamels in the playoffs is going to be nasty.
I got a stat for you. I looked it up today. Cliff Lee's first 40 innings as a Philly, he gave up 3 runs.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was phenomenal that was his first 5 starts. Then he went through a little rut, but then he was great in that first playoffs.
Yeah, he was. And the funny thing was, thinking about him and Hamels together, Hamels didn't have a great year that year.
No, 09 Hamels was terrible.
Yeah,
terrible. That's why they had
famous quote of the famous quote of when he said, "I can't wait for this year to be over."
Yeah, while we were in the World Series.
Yeah, that went off really well.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to me. I have an Eagle and a Sixer, and I'm not sure which direction. I'll go with my Eagle just because my Sixer is kind of similar to what I just went on the last one with Wentz. But we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Terrell Owens.
Yeah, of course.
The Eagles had been running out James Thrash, Todd Pinkston. That was before Reggie Brown, I think, right?
Yeah.
But Thrash, Pinkston, Charles Johnson, Torrance Small,
Damian
all these
Douglas,
terrible receivers. And
Antonio
finally,
Freeman past his prime.
Who is it?
Antonio Freeman.
All these guys are running out there for Donovan, and finally they get him a weapon in T.O., who was peak prime. Like that was T.O.'s.
Yeah,
that was the moment. Like he was coming from San Francisco. He was a beast. He was supposed to be a little bit of a problem. Turned out to be a bigger problem than we want to. He goes out week 1 against the Giants, goes for 3 touchdowns in an absolute romp in what turns out to be the Super Bowl season. But you watch that game and you were just like, holy crap, we are going to just be in for a wild ride. And these two are going to dominate the NFL for the next 10 years. That's what you're thinking in that moment.
And then, of course, the 81-yard touchdown.
Right. In
reception in the preseason.
The first
pass he had from McNabb. And it was a weird year in the sense that we, as well as, and I kind of feel like it's the same this year too, but everybody in the country felt like the Eagles were going to be in the Super Bowl. It was a matter of who they were going to play.
Yep.
And the Eagles and our fans that year were so, I mean, we loved every moment of that. I remember when we lost finally to Pittsburgh, I think it was.
Yeah. So that's when I was at Pitt.
Yeah.
And Pittsburgh that was Roethlisberger's rookie year. Right. And they were really good and they kicked our ass. And I heard about it 27-3 or something like
that. Yeah. They beat us up. But I mean, for the most part, other than really that game and the game where T.O. got hurt against Dallas. But those games were jokes.
Yeah,
I mean, like it was ridiculous. Not only did you have T.O. in his prime, you had McNabb in his prime.
Right. And B. West. Probably a little bit before Westbrook's prime, but he was still really good.
Well, because was that the year we had the 3-headed monster, or was that a little bit after that?
Who?
When we had the 3-headed, we had Westbrook with
that was that year, I think.
Buckhalter and Deuce.
Deuce
was already gone.
Deuce was not on that Super Bowl team, I don't think.
I was gonna say, yeah. I think Buckhalter was.
So it was Dorsey, Levens, and Westbrook.
Was it? Okay, so that was already over then. Okay.
I'm looking to see if
it must have been the year before that then.
Yeah, Westbrook, they didn't run the ball very much. Jesus. Let me make sure this was the right year.
No, remember, that was the problem, man. He never ran the ball.
This is not the right year. Hold on. I'm looking at the 04 team.
Yeah, that was a huge problem back then. That was one reason why people didn't like Andy, was that they thought our offense was one-dimensional. We just passed the ball all the time and let McNabb just go back, and do his thing, and he never had a balance.
Is that 04, 05? Maybe it says.
Yeah.
I don't know why Football Reference is being so weird about this.
Yeah, the 04 year going into 05 was the Super Bowl year. So it must have been 03 then, when Buckhalter.
Okay, I got it up here.
Buckhalter ran hard.
No, I had it right. Westbrook and Levens, Reno Mahe.
Yeah, I remember Reno.
But that was it.
Reno
Westbrook had 177 carries and Levens had 94 carries. That was
Reno
it.
ran like a 4.940 and was still somehow in the NFL.
There's T.O. T.O. ended the year 77 catches, 1,200 yards, 14 touchdowns in 14 games.
I would say that he missed 2 games too. Yeah, so you probably would have had like 90 and 16 touchdowns.
Yeah,
How many yards did he have in 14 games?
1,200.
So you probably would have had around 14.
Yep.
He was awesome.
All right, who else you got?
So the other guy I wanted to bring up was, let's see. I'm gonna get all the Phillies out the way. Gotta go with Doc.
You think Doc? I don't remember a first impression from Doc.
So, well, we had the buildup of like the trade deadline, if we were going to get him and pull the trigger and all that kind of stuff. Got him in the offseason.
We settled for Cliff Lee. Remember, we settled for Cliff.
Right. So when we got Halladay, he had 9 strikeouts, gave up 1 run over 7 innings, and all he did the rest of that year was won a Cy Young, threw a complete game. I mean, a no-hitter in the playoffs, threw a perfect game.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was lights out all year. I mean, when he gave up a run, it was like, whoa, they got a run off Doc. Like, it was a big deal. He was lights out.
I just don't remember the first like impression. I think his first start was the Nationals. I didn't put him on my list because I don't remember being like, wow.
Oh no.
That's how Doc was.
Yeah. He was, I mean, if anything, that's a testament to how great he was, because every game he had was like 7 Ks. I'm sorry, 9 Ks through 7 innings was like an okay game for him.
Right.
Like this guy would, I mean, he was one of the last aces to this day where they'd get complete games left and right. Yeah. Like, I mean, double-digit strikeouts or 8, 9 innings pitched, 1, 2 runs given up max. Like, I mean, he was just a horse in the truest form. And you know, obviously he was taken too early from us, but he was a great player. It's again another one so great in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so back to me. Did we list your number 1 yet? Because this might be your number. So this is your number 1 a Sixer?
Yeah.
All right, so we may have the same guy. I'm hoping we do. The ultimate first impression, the ultimate pull the wool over your eyes.
Yeah.
It's Michael Carter Williams.
Dude, his stats that game were insane. He was at a quadruple double.
Michael Carter Williams, who was probably the 10th pick in the draft, give or take. This was the beginning of the process. Against the Miami Heat, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh. Against the process team, goes for 22 points, 7 rebounds, 12 assists, 9 steals.
Yeah, he literally almost had a quadruple double in his first career game. I don't even know what the world would have done if that happened.
It had to be the best game of his career.
It was what that's one of the best games of anybody's career. That's a great game. Insane
performance. I don't know how you would watch that game. I said with Carson Wentz, be like, we have our quarterback, like we have our point guard. This rebuild's going to be 2 years, and we're going to be set because we got Michael Carter Williams.
I would love to know how many fantasy points he had that night.
Oh my God, the guy just went bananas. Yeah. And I don't know if there was ever another first impression like we got from Michael Carter Williams. And they win the game. They beat the Heat.
They won the first 3 games that year.
Yeah, they did.
And that was about that was 12 the rest of the year. Was that? I'm trying to remember. Was that Doug Collins or was that Brett?
That's got to be Brett because Doug was fired. Yeah, Doug was fired when Hinkie came in.
Okay, so it must have been Brett.
Yeah.
Again, that freshness, man, I miss that. Like just the hope that we had back then for something great.
Yeah, but we lost a lot of fucking games.
Oh yeah, it was tough. I still have a picture on my phone that I took when I was at work at the job I was working at the time, and it was a guy who was in the second row of the Sixers game sleeping.
Yeah,
and it was on CBS Sports.
I remember that.
And that was what you had back then. You might have had 10,000 at the game, maybe. And it was more of a chill environment. It was like, let's just go to the Sixers game and just get something to eat and kill time.
Good prices.
Yeah. Oh, remember they were like selling games for pennies, literally pennies.
Yeah.
You'd roll up there with like $4, $5 in your hand, in your pocket, and you get three seats.
Yeah. How many more you got on your list?
Let's see. I think we said Jimmy, Cliff, Tommy, Carter Williams, T.O., Doc. I got 2 more.
All right, I got 3. I got 3, but none of them are like, I think we've named all the big ones. These are all second level ones to me. Who do you got?
An underrated great game is AI's first game.
I thought about that. I just didn't get to look it up. I forgot.
Iverson he had 30 points, 6 assists. Shot, I forget what the shots were, but it was like 60. I remember I saw it was like 63% from the field. But you got to remember, like, especially back in '96 when the league was still about grown ass men, and he comes up 20, 21 years old and drops 30 off the bat at 6 foot was awesome. They didn't win the game. If I remember correctly, they lost to the Bucks. I think they played Ray Allen, and that was his first game because Allen and Ray were big rivals, even from their collegiate days when Ray was at UConn and Iverson was at Georgetown. And they also played. I read Iverson's book when I was younger, and it said how they also knew each other from like, the AAU circuit, and like I think they played like the young what was it called, like the junior USA or whatever they called it at the time team, and they actually had like a little bit of a scuffle in the hotel one time when they were teenagers over some candy.
Really?
Yeah. But obviously they've moved on from that at this point in the game. But when they were young and dumb, wet behind the ears, they got into a little bit. But they were heated rivals for their careers, especially in the beginning.
They're Big East too.
Yeah. So that's another thing I miss. We gotta have a segment one day where like sports stuff we miss.
Yeah,
Big East battles were awesome.
The best.
You'll never have them. I mean, the way that the college landscape is right now, it's awful. But anyway, back to what we're saying with Iverson. I feel like that's an underrated game.
Yeah, no, that's a really good
debut,
one.
I should say.
That's a really good one.
And that actually was also real quick. That was also the debut of Comcast Sports.
I did know that actually. That's a good pull by you because that's right around the same. Was that the first year in the arena?
Yes, and it was I think Zumhofe had done a year, maybe 2 before that, and then but obviously he was well known from the Iverson days. But I remember it was Neil Hartman in the studio. It was one of my favorites to this day still, D. Lynam, Leslie Goodell,
and Pat Boyle.
Pat Boyle might have been there too, but I remember for like the post game wherever coverage, it was those folks I was talking about.
Ron Burke.
Neil Hartman was the Michael Barkan.
Yeah, I like Hartman. Let's run through the last few quickly since we're running a little low on time.
Yeah,
I have got a pretty obvious one. When we say it, Joel Embiid.
That's my last one. Yeah,
that Embiid. First game against Oklahoma City. If you have a chance, Google the highlights of Joel Embiid's first game against Oklahoma City. He was moving so fast and playing with so much energy. I don't think we've seen him play like that. His rookie year, you just saw the potential, and he turned into be better than what we ever could have imagined him being. Right. But in that first game, you really saw like what we were waiting for.
That was our first game. Me and Ian's first game, also down there as season ticket holders. That was our first game that we had, and that was I'm pretty sure. To this day, I mean, I wasn't in the building when the Eagles had games where Hurts blew up and everybody was saying whatever they said or Wentz blew up. But in my experience, when Embiid had that game, he had 20 points in 21 minutes, I believe. And everybody in that building was like, I don't care if we win or not. We got a megastar that we haven't had in years on this team. And again, the future was so bright. It was
he was so energetic. He had so much.
It was we had the doctor that gave Westbrook the middle finger.
Yeah.
Like all kind of stuff was going on that night.
It was fantastic.
Gerald Henderson was dunking on dudes.
Good name.
Sergio Rodriguez was starting.
Oh God. The only other name I had on my list was I had Chase on my list. Obviously, hits a grand slam his first game.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. That was a big one. Yeah.
So I have Chase. I have a special bonus. I have worst first impressions. You have a guy. I didn't ask you to do this, so I might catch you off guard.
Oh man, I could think of some off the top. I mean, Levon Kirkland comes to mind as one that was awful.
I mean, I have the one.
Worst first impressions.
Yeah.
And we're not, and it's not an Eagle.
It is an Eagle.
Oh, is it one of the corners?
No. Got to go back a little ways. For who? For what?
Ricky
Waters. For who?
Oh yeah, but that was
game?
he was nice though after that.
Yeah, but his first impression was he was going over the middle and he pulls up.
Well, you know why I forgot that? Because the game was blacked out. I didn't even see that game.
It's Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
So it's the end of the game. I actually watched the clip this morning, and I think it was 17-6 or 21-6 with like 3 minutes left. And Randall throws him a pass over the middle, and he just pulls up so he doesn't get hit. And then after the game, they interview him and say, "Ricky, you pulled up." And he goes, "For who? For what?"
Oh man, and he was the man back in the day with the bandana on and everything.
Yeah. He was a big free agent signing from San Francisco.
He was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had just come up winning a Super Bowl.
Yeah, he was good for the Eagles for 2 years.
Oh yeah, I had a Ricky Waters double XL jersey.
Yes, you did. I remember that. 2 or 3 years for Ricky.
I think it was 3 years, wasn't it? He was here a while.
I'm pulling it up now. He had 3 years for Ricky. I mean, 1,273 yards, 1,411 yards, and 1,100 yards.
Yeah, nice.
It's good.
Nice
Yards per carry, not great, but he was productive. Couple Pro Bowl seasons.
He had not underrated. He had a under the radar rap album while he was here.
Very under the radar. But
those are fun times where we would have games where we didn't even watch or couldn't watch because they were blacked out because we couldn't get sold out games.
I remember the other one was the Arizona Cardinals game, which was Doug Peterson first game of the year when Brian Finneran dropped that ball for an interception. That was a good blackout game.
Yep.
But we'll add Michael Lorenzen to the list.
Yeah, he's on there now. Absolutely.
He's on there for life.
Yeah.
Anything else before we wrap?
No, it was a great moment. Hopefully we get some more great moments. You know, it's the summers. I hate to say it, man. The summer, especially from a teacher perspective, it's kind of winding down already.
Yeah, it's coming up quick.
They got the Halloween candy at the store now.
But you know what we can be excited for? Our big announcement next week.
That is true.
So let's make sure you stay tuned because we're very excited with what's coming on the horizon. We will announce it next week. But until then, we're going to drop that beat.